And a good Friday afternoon to you, wherever you may be. Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O here. It's Friday, August 6th, 2021. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast. For this Friday, as we review the week in baseball, we've got the weekend baseball coming up. Lots of things going on since the trading deadline happened. NBA free agency has started to take place after the draft last week. Oklahoma and Texas are now officially entered into the SEC. We'll review Dan Lust's conversation from last week. We'll talk a little Evander Kane. Apparently, there's a lot going on wagering-wise that affects us as well, too, on the show. Evander Kane of the San Jose Sharks being accused of betting on NHL games and gambling more than he is allowed, more than he should be, or more than he's allowed to be. But we'll get to that story in a little bit. And then like I said, the NBA free agency. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Mondays at 3 Eastern, Thursdays at noon Eastern. And today, right now, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock on the West Coast. We're on Facebook and YouTube Live. If you missed any of the podcast live, then you can, including the worldwide unsponsored famous picks yet segment that we're going to have at the end of the show, then you can download and subscribe, rate and review anywhere you get your podcasts. You can get to us on social media. We'll also have updates by 6 o'clock Eastern, and maybe not every day, but we're there pretty much every day by 6 Eastern. Vparty Sports on Twitter, Vparty Sports Instagram, MTMAR Podcast on Twitter, mtmarpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to email us and let us know in games or subject matter or whatever the case is, we look at that as much as we can. And also Facebook and Instagram, anywhere you find us. Charlie, Friday the 6th, how are you? Of August.
I'm in total mourning today. Messi is leaving Barca. I am not, I have to be honest. I say soccer for my U.S. friends. I have friends that live in Barcelona, so football for my friends in Barcelona. I can't believe the era comes to an end. I'm not a huge football fan, but I have always followed FC Barcelona for my friends in Europe, and I can't believe the era has come to an end. But even worse than that, is the rumor is that he is going to PSG and Paris, which we all may have to go to the Eiffel Tower and jump off. I mean, it couldn't be any worse than that. So today, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to drink, but it could not be any worse for any of us who follow FC Barcelona. Messi is gone, and it's going to be very messy for the rest of us for the rest of the day.
Nice play on words. And that soccer segment brought to you by nobody, sponsored by nobody. And that's pretty much all the soccer we're going to have for today. But it is a big story, and I'm glad you brought it up at the beginning. All right. Had not had you on since the trading deadline ended. Of course, we didn't have a show yesterday. Just want to have you relive the trade deadline last week that ended right after we got off the air, a couple hours after we got off the air. I don't know if you saw my show on Monday, but these are the numbers that came out of MLB Network in terms of the MLB trade deadline. There were 42 trades up until 4 o'clock Eastern last week, 1 o'clock for us on the West Coast. 42 trades, 114 players traded. All 30 teams were involved in some form or another in terms of trades. You want to talk about a trading deadline frenzy. Charlie, we haven't had it in a while. We wanted to get your opinion on it because you've seen a lot of them. In fact, let me read you more numbers on this. 4 Silver Sluggers, 5 Gold Glove winners, 1 League MVP, 1 Cy Young Award winner, 4 top 100 prospects, and of course, I just mentioned all 30 teams involved. Charlie, your impressions, and now a week later, your thoughts on how it all went down.
Well, first of all, I love the fact that the trade deadline is the trade deadline. That is, I think that we're seeing the result of that with those stats. It got to the point where the trade deadline didn't mean much because then there was the whole waiver thing and all of that just got absolutely ridiculous. So I think the fact that there's now a hard trade deadline makes that much more interesting. It makes the deals fly and get a little crazy and exciting. So I think baseball has made that very exciting just by the fact that I know this is going to shock you, but baseball actually did something right when they went to the hard trade deadline. But I also think that it was very interesting because there are a lot of teams that are competitive that realized that they needed to do something in order to make themselves get better. And just from a betting perspective, let's just look at who really made themselves more competitive. And we got to start off with the Dodgers. and I'm not trying to placate to you because the Dodgers are your team, but by getting Scherzer and Turner and getting Duffy, they improved themselves in their odds for the World Series. They went from a plus 300 to a plus 275
Yeah.
at the books just by that trade. Well, that's huge. When you look at the books and you improve yourself that much, that is huge. And then Houston, they didn't really improve their odds, but they didn't hurt their odds. They're still at plus 600. So if you look at the books, there's your World Series. And I really enjoyed watching those games from LA early this week, because if the books are right, we were seeing a precursor to the World Series early this week going on. If you look at the Giants, for instance, what did the Giants do? Well, the Giants improved themselves a little, but not a lot. Chris Bryant is expected to help them, but is that enough to push them over the top to put them into the World Series? The books don't think so. So it was really interesting to see all of that movement. There were a lot of people that spent money. Right now, you have to say the Yankees helped themselves. The Yankees all of a sudden have jumped up, and they're right behind the A's, knocking on the door to get into the wild card situation, something that we did not think was going to happen. So it was wild, it was crazy, and it was everything that, as a fan, that as an organization of MLB, and as of the wagering houses would love to see that the trade deadline would be, because it has stimulated everyone to all of a sudden want to wager more on the last couple of months of baseball.
Vasu, Vaddiparty, and Charlie O here on the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, August 6th. Of course, we got NFL Hall of Fame weekend we'll get to as well. A game last night, the Hall of Fame game they played on Thursday, so you have both ceremonies on Saturday and Sunday. Talk about the NFL in a later segment, but let's get back to the World Series futures here. So I just looked it up. I put these on Monday that were up here. So the Dodgers are still, on my book, the Dodgers are still 300 and Houston is 500. The Dodgers go out and get Max Scherzer. Trey Turner was a total bonus as a fan and as a surprise to everybody else. Not only do they have him, the Dodgers have leverage on Corey Seager, who is a free agent. He's one of the big classes of shortstops in free agency with Javier Baez. Francisco Lindor has already signed his contract. Trevor Story of the Colorado Rockies, just to name a few of the shortstops that are out there. But the Dodgers have a lot of leverage with Trey Turner. They can move him to second base. He came up as a second baseman with the Padres organization. Here, the Padres were trying to get him back. But if Seager decides to walk, or Seager thinks he can get more money, then they've got Trey Turner to plug in. And I don't anticipate the Dodgers will bring Corey Seager back. It's just a matter of how much money he wants, and the injuries have kind of hurt him. Houston improved their bullpen. They got Yimi Garcia. They got Kendall Graveman from the Seattle Mariners, their own division. We talked about that last week too. Bats wise, they haven't really been affected by all the chants and even the trash cans or anything like that. They're just going out there and they're taking, throw what you got, and we're going to hit everything that we have. And our bullpen at the end, Ryan Presley is out for them right now, so they're going bullpen by committee in terms of saving games. But Yimi Garcia had only blown one save for the Marlins all year before his trade, and Kendall Graveman had an ERA under 1 with Seattle, as he ended up being their closer. And Seattle had struggled. I think they were 1-6. In fact, they had 2 walk-offs over the weekend against the Rangers on the bad side that Jonah Heim, the catcher for the Rangers, actually did have 2 walk-offs on the Seattle bullpen. And then the White Sox, who just lost, I think they just lost 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 to the Royals this week, including they've lost 2 out of 3 to the Royals, including the other night. I'm sorry, 3 out of 4 because they lost 2 in a row. They lost Wednesday and Thursday. They did win one of the games, and they did lose the first game 9-1 to the Royals on Wednesday night. So the White Sox struggling a little bit. They still have a 9.5 game lead, 8 up in the loss column on Cleveland. They're plus 600. Milwaukee, the Mets, San Diego, San Francisco are all 1,100 still. Boston and Tampa Bay are 1,200. They played each other last weekend. Tampa Bay swept them at home. The Red Sox had a tough time with the Tigers this week. They lost 2 out of 3 to Detroit, including getting blown out yesterday. Red Sox pitching still a question right now. Their bullpen's there. Yankees picked up Gallo and Rizzo, we know, and their bullpen, I'm not sure what's going on with Aroldis Chapman. They're going on with openers today. Wandy Peralta. We'll get to the lines in a little bit, but the Yankees at plus 1,800. Oakland, I was there Wednesday afternoon. I saw the walk-off for Matt Olson against the Padres. It didn't look like they had anything going, but they end up splitting the series with the Padres. The Padres were without Tatis, so those odds surprisingly haven't changed yet, at least according to what I have. But Oakland at plus 2,000, and then Toronto, who just does nothing but swing bats, and they've improved themselves as well, plus 2,500. If they want to get back into the East race, they are 6.5 back of Tampa Bay, 5 back of Boston. They have a 4-game series with the Red Sox that wraps around on Monday. So this is a big chance for Toronto to get back, not only put pressure on Tampa Bay, but also to put pressure on Boston with the head-to-head matchups. And don't forget, the Dodgers just added Cole Hamels. They guaranteed him $1 million. That's the trade deadline that happened last Friday. You can still pick up pitchers on waivers, and so Cole Hamels was still out there, and Cole Hamels did go to the Dodgers. So now you've got Walker Buehler, Julio Urias, who has 13 wins. You've got Clayton Kershaw coming off the back end. You got Max Scherzer now, and you've got Cole Hamels. And notice that I did not mention Trevor Bauer in there. Major League Baseball and the Players Union has extended his administrative leave. Again, we're not that type of show. Everybody knows the story. So it's not that type of story that we're going to get into, but everybody knows what's going on. And we have our personal feelings about that. I say if things happen and he doesn't look good with it and he comes to be found guilty of whatever is being charged, then that should be it for him. In fact, I got on Justin Turner last year for going back, and Justin Turner is one of my guys, and I got on Justin Turner for going back on the field after the World Series, especially after they pulled him in game 6 after testing positive and going back out and celebrating with his guys. So I thought that was worthy of a year suspension before we even knew anything about it. But those are the odds going up. In terms of the National League West now, obviously the division to still look at, Charlie. The Giants have a 4-game lead on the Dodgers after that miraculous win yesterday. Those are games yesterday, and I want to spend a little time with this because they needed a win like that to come from behind to show that they're not flukes. The starting pitching has been questioned a little bit. They scored 4 in the top of the 9th off Taylor Clark and a combination of bullpen guys for Arizona. We know how bad Arizona is, but you still had a 4-0 lead, and Merrill Kelly, who had not had a lot of great run support for Arizona. I mean, look at where Arizona is in the standing. Goes 8 innings, gets pulled after the 8th inning. Chris Bryant leads off the 9th inning, leads to a 4-run rally. They get a run in the 10th. Down 4 runs for the first time since 1993. Down 4 runs without scoring any runs for the first time since 1933. That bodes well for the San Francisco Giants in my book. And even though I'm a Dodgers fan, a game like that will take Charlie O and myself. They will take a game like this, and they will propel them to not only go further than maybe people thought, but maybe even to a World Series title with that kind of momentum going behind them, especially going into a good pitching matchup situation weekend against the Milwaukee Brewers in Milwaukee this weekend.
Well, and that's exactly why they got Chris Bryant. I mean, he did yesterday exactly what they want him to do. And they talk about wins against replacement and all those kind of things. All those analytics yesterday went boom right there. And that's what you want. And as close as everything is right now in the National League West, a comeback win. And I mean, I love all this. I love all those stats. First time since 1933 and 1993. All those things are fun. But what it really means is a comeback win like that, when everything is as close in the standings as they are, can really make a difference when it comes down to the end of September, and could make the difference, as close as everything is in the standings, could make the difference in going straight to the playoffs or having to go to the wild card game. So all the games right now are significant because of the way things are bunched, particularly between the Giants and the Dodgers, because frankly, now with San Diego back 7.5 games, they're starting to become just a wild card team at this point, which my partner has been predicting all season long. Hats off. Vasu has been saying that even with all of their improvements, San Diego's just not that good, particularly because of their poor defense. And that is coming back to haunt them. And they are starting to fall back. And I think they're going to make in fact, the wild card is going to be a National League West affair. But it's
maybe.
Well, I still think so. But but San Diego is quickly falling out of the conversation of winning the National League West. So again, I'm running far afield here, and I know that just shocks you. But anyway, a win like the Giants win yesterday, significant for them as they go down the stretch.
No doubt about it. And the reason I only brought up the historical facts is that it just does not happen where you're down 4 runs in the 9th inning after being totally shut down, and to have them come back like that. I know Arizona's not a good team, but they're still major league players. And Merrill Kelly was outstanding yesterday. In fact, I almost thought of taking him as an underdog because Alex Wood had struggled since all the spider tack and all the rosin bag, and he just doesn't have the same grip and the same access to the location that he's had. And he struggled yesterday, giving up four earnings in 3 innings pitched. In 4 innings pitched. And you see the lines at the bottom. We'll get to all the games later in terms of the baseball games. We'll post them up here for you. By the way, one game going to go off at 2:20 Eastern, about an hour from now, 11:20 on the West Coast, 1:20 in Chicago. The annual Sox-Cubs rivalry. Kyle Hendricks and Lance Lynn, who just signed a 2-year extension with the Chicago White Sox. The game is 174 for the White Sox, who just lost 2 out of 3 to the Kansas City Royals. And Kyle Hendricks with the Cubs, who had a tough time in Denver the last few days. It's going to be interesting. The city's all pumped. They always are for the Mayor's Cup and what they call it. But Lance Lynn, $1.74 favorite on the road at Chicago in front of those rabid Cubs fans, and they're not having a good year. We know that. But don't you think they want to take it out on the White Sox as well? Let's move back to the National League West, as I said real quickly. I'm going to put the games up here for today in the National League West. But the thing about the Padres that I like, as I do this here real quick, a little producing on the side here, is the thing about the Padres is Tatis is out now, and that's a big loss for them. I look at the wild card standings. The Cincinnati Reds kind of have it in their ballpark. The NL Central, outside of Milwaukee, is not really a good division. They've got a lot of games against the Central Division still, and they can make up 3.5 games. They are 3 games back in the loss column, so they actually have a game to play with against the Padres. Cincinnati has 58 wins. The Phillies have been hot. They've won 5 in a row. They are only a half game back in the Mets in the National League East and 5.5 back in the wild card. You look at the Atlanta Braves. They just went into St. Louis, who we thought was still playing for something between them and the Cubs. They get 3 straight over the Cardinals. Atlanta, 6.5 back in the wild card, and they are in the divisional standings. They are only a game and a half back and 2 back in the loss column of the Mets, who have really struggled. The Mets lost 3 out of 4 to the Marlins this weekend as we switch over to the National League East. But in terms of the wild card, the Padres have a lot more to play for. They got to settle down their pitching. Their starters, Melanson, has not looked good the last 2 weeks, as evident by what we saw on Wednesday afternoon in Oakland. The A's, give them credit. They came back on Melanson, but it was not a game that the Padres should have lost, especially even going to extra innings for that matter. The A's bats were totally silenced, and Melanson usually shuts the door, but it did not happen. I'm not sold on San Diego. I wasn't in the beginning. And now with Tatis out and probably out for the rest of the year, their wild card looks in jeopardy as well, too, especially as I just rattled off the standings. You're looking at 4 teams that are 8 games or under back in the wild card, including St. Louis, although the St. Louis Cardinals did not help themselves yesterday. So let's switch over to the National League East, Charlie, as we get the National League games on the board here. The National League East, the Mets are a half a game up on the Phillies, 1 game back in the loss column. The Braves are 2 back in the loss column, a game and a half back. Washington, 7.5 back. They might be out of it. They just don't have anybody left to throw, and they don't have that much offense going for them right now. And then the Marlins made life easy for a lot of the National League East teams. They really surprised the Mets and beat them 3 out of 4. I thought the Mets had a good chance of winning with Rich Hill yesterday. So National League East thoughts here, Charlie.
Well, haven't we all been waiting for the Mets collapse? I mean, I think ever since the Mets got on top, we've all been kind of going, okay, isn't it time? I mean, I know they added some pieces, but it's just felt like it's been a house of cards at Citi Field all season long. And I'm just ready to see them fold.
Not having DeGrom either doesn't help to be.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the DeGrom situation, I think, is very serious for them because they're thin. It's a thin roster. And we knew that going into the season. So I'm the one thing that I am surprised about is I'm surprised that the Phillies have sucked it up. I mean, this is the time of year that the Phillies also collapse, and they're starting to move it up. And God love them. Phillies fans, I love Phillies fans because there are no more dedicated fans in the world than Phillies fans. I mean, the only fans that have hurt worse than Phillies fans are Cubbies fans. And so for Philly fans, I'm excited for you to see that they're in the conversation right now and knock it on the door. I think that's exciting. The one that surprises me at this point, with all the adversity they've gone through, are the Braves. I mean, they've added a few pieces to try to make things happen, and I mean, we didn't think that, I mean, Jack Peterson, okay, all right, okay, that's okay, okay, big deal. That's not going to help. Well, okay, so things are helping. They've obviously gone into the system and done some things too. So it's going to be interesting. And you talk about the Marlins. You know, I keep feeling like the Marlins may be a season, maybe two away from all of a sudden really being back in the conversation of being a very, very competitive team. I know they're really building up their minor league system. They're coming through, and they're just a pain in the rear to a lot of teams. That they're not real consistent yet, but when they get on a roll, they can get in and they can just, they'll go into a series and all of a sudden you're going, who are these guys? And teams have got to watch out because they're going to ruin the weekends for a lot of teams between now and the end of September.
Last thing on the NL East before we move on to the Central here, the Miami Marlins and the Atlanta Braves, the only two teams with plus run differentials. Miami +2 in last place, 9.5 back of the Mets. And I believe they're further out in the wild card. I want to say they are. Yeah, they're 14.5 in the wild card. So any hot streak that they get, if they have any chance, this is the time to go for the Marlins. They did beat the Mets 3 out of 4, so they did pick up 2 games on the New York Mets. But +2 for Miami, +61 for the Braves. The Atlanta Braves have won 3 in a row at St. Louis. On the board here, they're going to be hosting the Washington Nationals. This should be a weekend for Freddie Freeman and company to take advantage of a Washington pitching staff that has not been very good the last few weeks. All you had to do was see the Nationals pitching staff and their bullpen, especially against Philadelphia when they had them on the ropes. I think 3 out of the 4 games they had them on the ropes. Monday night, the Phillies came back. Yesterday, the Phillies came back again and got a one-run victory over the Nationals in Washington, D.C. But even the Phillies announcers said that they're not sure if the Phillies are a good team or not. They were very inconsistent, and their hitting is out. I mean, they've got players on that team. Their offense should be much better than the other 4 teams, and their record should be better than 56 and 53 with Aaron Nola leading the way on the staff. Now they've got bullpen help. Hector Neris is not going to close. Ranger Suarez was closing. He's got a few saves. The addition of Ian Kennedy from the Texas Rangers is going to help them as well, too. So it's going to be an interesting National League East race right now. Mets up a half a game, 1.5 on Atlanta, half a game on Philly, 1.5 on Atlanta, and 7.5 on Washington. Miami, 9.5 brings up the rear. As we look at the National League East games, Philadelphia and New York played this weekend. It's going to be a good series. Kyle Gibson, newly acquired by the Phillies, makes his second start. He got 14 runs of support against the Pirates last Sunday, so that's a good way to start. Marcus Stroman, who struggled his last 3 starts, 109 favored by Philadelphia in Philadelphia, 9.5, a big total for the Philadelphia Phillies, but they are in Philadelphia, and so it is a bandbox, and Marcus Stroman gave up 7 runs to the Reds last weekend. Cincinnati, speaking of which, 177, and we'll hit the NL Central in a second, 177 with Wade Miley against JT Brubaker. Don't sleep on the Pirates. The Cincinnati does have a tough time with them, but this is a chance for the Reds to make some hay, not only in the division because the Brewers have San Francisco. We'll get to that game in a second, but the Brewers have San Francisco this weekend. That's no easy task for a Brewers team that doesn't hit. There's 7 back in the National League Central, but only 3 back in the loss column to San Diego, as we mentioned earlier. So Miley and Brubaker. Atlanta, we mentioned 179 with Muller. Kyle Muller, the young left-hander, goes up against Eric Fetty. Here's a matchup for the weekend that I'm really interested in. Obviously, living in the Bay Area, everybody's talking about coming off the victory yesterday. Milwaukee has I forgot who they played during the week, but they won their last game. They're +91 in run differential. They've got a pretty comfortable lead of 7 games on Cincinnati. Corbin Burns against Logan Webb. Logan Webb has been outstanding the last month. Corbin Burns about a $1.50 favorite. The total 8 against this Giants team. I'm probably looking at San Francisco maybe to take 2 out of 3 this weekend. mostly because the Brewers don't hit, and Brandon Woodruff hasn't gotten the run support, even though they've gotten Escobar right now. Milwaukee, San Francisco there, and then Colorado, Miami, bring up the rear in Colorado. They're still tough. And then in the final game of the National League, San Diego 2-15 over Arizona. Ryan Weathers, probably an opener, 3 or 4 innings against Caleb Smith. A chance for San Diego to get healthy on the Arizona Diamondbacks this weekend as well, too. All right, Charlie, National League games as we go through the schedule here.
Well, I'm that Philly Mets series. We're obviously going to want to watch because that's got implications on who's going to wind up on top there in the division right now, and I think that'll be interesting. I think it's really important for the Phillies because if they could walk out of that series and be on top in the division, I think that would give them a lot of momentum there. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. If Cincinnati's serious about competing for the wild card, they've got to take 2 out of 3 in that series. If they don't do well, then I think they start falling back. And I'm a Cincy fan from my history, and I'm pessimistic because if you're a Cincy fan, you're always pessimistic this time of year. It's just in our DNA. And frankly, that Cincy Pittsburgh series, it's always a big one, and Pittsburgh always sucks it up against Cincinnati. That is just history. And it repeats itself time and time again. So Cincy's got a tough one there. Atlanta's got to do well against Washington. I mean, Washington had a Kmart blue light special and sold off that team. So you better beat up on them. If you don't, again, you're not serious about winning. That's there. The series of the weekend for me, and not because I'm on the West Coast, just because I think this is an important series to look at about who's going to win the National League Championship. I think that series between the Giants and the Brewers is going to be a good one. It's going to tell a lot about who has the strength there, and it's going to be a lot about hitting versus pitching, because you're absolutely right. The Brewers can't hit, but man, that team sure can pitch. As a matter of fact, I was watching a little snippet this morning on SportsCenter, and they were talking about one of the players for the Brewers. I forget who was saying, we feel like we don't have to go out and score 10 runs because we got such a pitching staff. And I'm thinking, man, your pitching staff has to hate you. They have to hate you because no relief corps wants to hear, well, we don't have to go out and score 10 runs. Yes, you do.
You can, absolutely, because it's not going to happen all the time. Corbin
Burns. It'll be interesting. So yeah, but to me, that's the series in the National League of the weekend.
Corbin Burns goes for the Brewers today. Brandon Woodruff, their other stud ace, goes tomorrow against the Giants, to be determined who's going to start tomorrow for the Giants. And then with Gausman not around on paternity leave, congratulations to the Gausman family. And then on Sunday, Brett Anderson, who pitched his last great start against the Braves in Atlanta last week, goes on Sunday for the Brewers. A big step up for the Brewers to try and take the series from the Giants. It could be a preview. The Giants go in with Logan Webb on Friday, on Saturday to be determined, and on Sunday, Johnny Cueto will go up against Brett Anderson. All right, we move on to the other National League games. San Diego, if they're going to be serious. Actually, let's go back for a second. I want to talk about Cincinnati. They're 3 back in the wild card, as I said. This is a big series for them against Pittsburgh. They will be watching the Brewers and Giants very closely because San Francisco is really good, and this is an opportunity for Cincinnati not only maybe to make – if they do well against Pittsburgh, and San Francisco has the games of their life in Milwaukee against that pitching staff where they do take 2 out of 3. This is a chance maybe for the Reds to make up some ground on Milwaukee. They did earlier when they swept Milwaukee in Milwaukee 4-game series about 3 weeks ago in Milwaukee when Cincinnati went in and beat them up. So if they have any thoughts of the division, that this is the weekend to probably get serious about it, as you said. And then, of course, the wild card, they are 3 back of the Padres, who have Arizona. So if the Padres want to maintain it, they are going to have Ryan Weathers go against Caleb Smith. All right. By the way, one last note. I don't know if you saw this note or not. The Cardinals had the Braves on the ropes for all 3 games. I watched the Tuesday game. They were on ESPN Wednesday and Thursday as well, too. I'm sorry, Wednesday and Thursday, both on ESPN. The Cardinals have had 26 walks with the bases loaded this year. That is double what any other team has had They walked in 4 runs yesterday when they were up 4-2 in the 8th inning. The Braves scored 4. They tied it up in the 8th and then ended up getting 3 more runs in the 9th inning, I believe, was how the box score broke down. But they walked 4 guys with the bases loaded yesterday. Charlie, that bullpen has given up 26 walks with the bases loaded this year. And there's no way a stat like that, you can't tell me that they're going to be able to handle the pressure in postseason baseball. So that's just something. Sorry to all you Cardinals fans out there. I see one on Facebook that is from St. Louis right now, but that's just not good baseball. And even with Goldschmidt and Arenado pumping it out like he does, pumping them out like they do as far as runs, and their offense is pretty good. They did take the Braves pitching to task a little bit, but this is a series at Atlanta. They got a bonus by sweeping, and now they're right there with the Marlins' help. The Braves are there. All right, Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O. Thanks to everybody on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We are here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, Facebook and YouTube. Download and subscribe anywhere you miss it. We're a sports show about sports and sports wagering. We just hit the National League. Let's hit the American League now. Tampa Bay, we've got them. They are a game and a half, 2 up in the loss column on the Red Sox. They're going to Baltimore this weekend. This is a game that Baltimore could win tonight with John Means on the mound. John Means, their all-star pitcher, is about a 500 pitcher, and Tampa Bay, for some reason, always has a tough time with Baltimore. They took 2 out of 3 in Tampa when they had a chance to sweep them. Ryan Yarbrough, I don't know how many innings he's going to go, but he's generally an opener for them. The Yankees, who are red hot, the Yankees are 5.5 back, 5 back in the loss column of the Rays. They've got their continuation of the Seattle series. 2 left-handers go. Wandy Peralta out of the bullpen, so this is going to be a bullpen game for the Yankees against Marco Gonzalez, who's had his struggles coming off injury. Boston and Toronto. We mentioned Toronto trying to make some hay on Boston this weekend with the 4-game series. Alex Manoah, if you haven't seen him pitch as a rookie this year, he's really, really good. And Boston's had a tough time scoring. They had a tough time with Detroit this week, who's been really good as well. Since their 9-24 start, the Tigers are 10 games over 500, 5th best record in Major League Baseball, 53-58. They've got the Cleveland Indians on the road tonight, Matt Manning and Cal Quantrill. Houston Astros, they got beat by the Twins yesterday. Shocking. Framber Valdez gave it up yesterday to the Twins. That helped the A's cause. The A's picked up a half a game. They're 4 back now of the Astros, and the Mariners are 7.5 back, 8 back in the loss column. They lost 2 in a row already. But Quantrill and Matt Manning, and then Zach Greinke and Bailey Ober for the Minnesota Twins tonight. And then the final game in the American League, the Oakland A's, their all-star Chris Bassett going at 275 against Fultonevich, who's beat them twice. And so 275 is a lot for me, even though Fultonevich leads the world in home runs. I think he's given up 32 home runs already this year for the Texas Rangers, and that's a bigger ballpark than it was in the old stadium. And he's still giving up 32 home runs, and 8 the total there in Oakland. So that's what we have on the American League, Charlie. Let's run through the American League here. I'm looking at Yankees Seattle. Obviously, the Yankees are playing well. They're on a 3-game winning streak. Toronto's on a 3-game winning streak. They manhandled Cleveland this week. Boston just lost 2 out of 3 to the Tigers. Excuse me. And then Tampa Bay is leading the division, 2 up on Boston, 5 up on the Yankees and Red Sox in the loss column. And then the Orioles bring up the rear. Go ahead and take it away with what you think about the American League right now.
Well, first of all, I like the Yankees at home against the Mariners. They're in the stadium, and they now have that power outfield. And with Rizzo there too. I mean, good Lord. And I still contend they really didn't want Rizzo, but that to me was that was a house. That was a Steinbrenner move. They knew that Boston wanted Rizzo, and they said, "Nope, can't have him. We're going to take him." And now it's working out great. But that was a total block move, in my opinion. And now they've just got this power, and they're going to make it work for them there at the stadium in the Bronx. And I think it's going to be a big weekend for them, and it's a good move, and it's working out. I don't think they're going to win the division, but I think they're going to get into the wild card. And you get them into the wild card, especially if they can win that wild card, get that wild card and get home field advantage. Katie barred the door. Then it becomes, you don't want the freaking Yankees in the playoffs. I mean, you just don't, because then, the crowd becomes an effect, and you're in New York, and oh God, it just, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I got to go throw up. I'll be back. You know, it's just a whole different deal. So, you know, yeah, no, I think that's going to be a big series. And I think if the Yankees can be successful there, that'll be important. Big weekend for Toronto. You know, they've got to, they've got to make things happen for themselves this weekend.
At least take 3 out of 4 from Boston. They're at home, and they're back in Toronto, by the way, too. They're 6-1 back in Rogers
Yeah,
Center in
yeah,
Toronto. So that bodes well for them as well, too. And Manoah's really good. Robbie Ray, the All-Star for Toronto as well, too. I'm looking at Houston this weekend after dumping the first game in Minnesota. They've got 3 more games to play the Twins right now. If they're going to try and separate themselves from the Oakland A's, the A's have the Rangers this weekend. The Rangers have no offense anymore. Adolis Garcia is really good for them, and some of their pitching has been okay, but the loss of Gibson and the loss of that offense is probably going to hurt the Rangers this weekend. So Houston still looking over their shoulder at 4 games up on the A's and 7.5 on the Mariners. Houston, Minnesota, big series for me this weekend. The Seattle Yankees for the AL East part of it, and then of course Toronto, Boston, as you said, and then Tampa Bay at Baltimore. They're leading the division, so this is a weekend where they need to take 2 out of 3 on the road. And then you got Oakland and Texas, 4 back after that win on Wednesday. Not as scintillating as the Giants win yesterday, coming from behind, but nonetheless, they came from behind against one of the greater closers of the year, Charlie.
yeah. And we have to look at history here. The A's have always had problems with 2 American League teams in particular, and that is the Rangers and the Indians. Ongoing, if you look at the history of the A's playing those 2 teams, they give them fits. And the A's cannot afford to have fits against the Rangers this weekend. They need to win this series. They don't have to sweep it, but they have to take 2 out of 3 in this series this weekend to keep pace and try to continue to keep a hold in that wild card. Because Vasu, their history is they've been in that 1-game wild card 3 times. They've lost it 3 times, and they do not want to be on the road in that 1-game wild card. They need to at least have home field advantage because they do play better in the Coliseum. They take advantage of that big foul territory and everything else, and they need to be at home. So they cannot have a bad weekend. The other one series, and it's an interleague series that I think is interesting and important, is the Angels and the Dodgers this weekend. And I know the Angels are an afterthought.
They're only 6 back in the wild card, Charlie.
Yeah.
6 back of the A's in the wild card for that second wild card spot. So they're really not, but now they've lost Rendon for the whole year, and their Shohei Ohtani's the show, and their pitching and their bullpen is still a question mark. Sandoval's been good the last few weeks since he came up. Go ahead.
But they're playing the Dodgers,
right?
And that's going to pump them up. It's it's the true rivalry down there, and the Dodgers cannot let down this weekend. They need to keep pace, and so the Angels, no matter what their condition, are going to be pumped up because they're the little brothers down there, and they will always be the little brothers down there. And they want to show everybody, hey, we belong. So the adrenaline is going to be pumping for the Angels, and adrenaline won't get you through a season, but it'll get you through a 3-game series. And so the Dodgers need to take this series seriously, and again, they need to take 2 out of 3 in this series to keep pace with everything that's going on.
Dodgers split with Houston, 2 good games. Lance McCullers was outstanding Tuesday. Max Scherzer, who said he never got a curtain call before, got his first one on Wednesday, really shut them out. Dodgers came up with 4 runs in the first inning off of Jake Odorizzi. They go on to cruise in that game as well, too. They're 4 back. Interleague games today, we mentioned the Cubs and White Sox, the Mayor's Cup, going to go off in about 40 minutes, 11:20 on the West Coast, 1:20 Chicago time. Lance Lynn, Kyle Hendricks, White Sox struggling right now a little bit. They are 4-6 in their last 10. The Cubbies 3-7 in their last 10. You would think it'd be a White Sox game, but the White Sox have struggled. Lance Lynn has had good success in Chicago Early pick. I'll give you an early pick right now, but we'll recap it at the end. The under 9 in the game is what I'm looking at weather-wise, and the fact that both offenses have struggled this last week. St. Louis with Adam Wayne.
I think that's a good pick too, because they're bringing the entire roster from the Iowa Cubs up to play in that game. So I think that under 9 is a good one.
Hopefully so, because we need to get on a roll here. St. Louis, Kansas City, the battle of the Show Me State. Adam Wainwright still doing it, 40 years old. Mike Miners had some good starts. Kansas City gave the White Sox a tough time this week. Mike Miner, the left-hander, going up against St. Louis, who just lost the 3 in a row in their bullpen. We've already mentioned the bullpen travails. 26 bases loaded walk this year. I mean, as a former pitcher and not even that high of a pitcher, that's too much even for Little League and high school and college or anywhere that you pitch. That's just too much. And of course, the Dodgers fighting out for the Giants. This is a good weekend for them. They can take advantage of a depleted Angels team. Ohtani going to be the show this weekend in Dodger Stadium. 200 for David Price. Don't know how long he's going to go, but he's going to be the 5th starter. He's going to be inserted in the starting rotation until Clayton Kershaw comes back. And Patrick Sandoval has been very good for the Angels since he's been inserted into the starting rotation as well, too. In fact, Patrick Sandoval, and I know we're late for a break here, but Patrick Sandoval was the guy that replaced Shohei Ohtani when he missed the BART in Oakland for his start in Oakland. And ever since that start, he pitched well against the A's that night. Joe Madden has not pulled him out of the rotation. So it's amazing how things happen for certain reasons. All right.
Wally Pipp.
Yeah. That's going to do it for the baseball segment. A lot to talk about in baseball. Coming up after the break, we'll talk NBA free agency. And by the way, did anybody notice this is Hall of Fame weekend in the NFL? The Hall of Fame game was played Thursday as opposed to the weekend because they've got 2 classes to induct this weekend. We'll talk about that towards the end. But after we come back, NBA free agency, sign and trades, everything going on after draft last week. We're still only in the beginning part of free agency. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu, Vaddiparty, Charlie O. Thanks to everybody on Facebook and YouTube. If you miss any of it, you can download, subscribe, anywhere you get your podcast. We're back in 30 seconds with the NBA and NBA free agency and all the trades that have gone on in the last 10 days. All right, welcome back to the show, Make the Money and Run podcast. Charlie O, Vasu Vaddiparty here, the Friday edition as we go into another big weekend of sports. We got the Hall of Fame weekend, the induction ceremonies. We've got Major League Baseball, all the pennant races. Now we're in August. All the pennant races starting to take shape and form, both in the divisions and in the wild card. But let's move on to the NBA and all the free agency and all the trades that have happened. Some of the things that are listed was just too many to list as I tried to do it, but Kyle Lowry signs with the Heat. That was a sign. These are all sign and trades, but technically they were free agents. But this assures the other teams get them back. And I don't know what the salary cap is going to be for this year, but the Bird rule rights were in effect for Chris Paul as he re-signs with the Suns. He did decline the option. He's going to get $120 million over 3 years, $44 million this year coming up, I believe, and then the rest of it. Boy, I don't know if I would have given him 3 years for that kind of money because he is declining. He is 36 years old, but he's there, and it's a bad contract, I think, for the Suns. By year 3, we'll see how it goes. But where he got him to this year, he was still my MVP candidate, right up there at the top with everybody else who was there. Lowry to the Heat, Spencer Dinwiddie from the Nets to the Wizards, Eric Paschall from the Warriors to the Jazz. How about the Bulls? I don't know. I'm not sure which way the Bulls are going, but they get DeMar DeRozan from the Spurs, Lonzo Ball from the Pelicans for multiple draft picks and also a couple players that went back to both San Antonio and New Orleans. Josh Richardson was a good player from Miami. He goes to Boston. Derek Favors from Utah to Oklahoma City. When Ricky Rubio puts on the Spanish uniform, he is Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan all combined into one, because that kid does not miss, and I shouldn't call him a kid. He's older now. He nearly put them on his back, and nearly had an upset through about 3.5 quarters of the USA and Olympic basketball. And then he comes over to the NBA and he shoots 42% from the field, about 38% from 3, and nobody wants him. So he goes to Cleveland. Landry Shamet from the Brooklyn Nets goes to the Phoenix Suns. A little surprising here that Steven Adams got traded. I know they wanted some offense in that center position to go with Zion Williamson in New Orleans, and maybe a little defensive rebounding as well too, because we know the Pelicans didn't play defense. Jonas Valanciunas goes to the New Orleans, and then Kemba Walker went to Oklahoma City first, but then Oklahoma City ended up sending him to the Knicks. And then we've got free agents, including Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard are still impending. Leonard declined his option. Damian Lillard, probably a foregone conclusion that he's not going to go back to Portland based on what the free agency tea leaves are saying right now. And we mentioned Chris Paul. And I cannot go without talking about the Lakers. And I'm not sure exactly what the premise was. I know Russell Westbrook's a triple-double machine, and it takes the pressure off LeBron James to handle the ball a lot more. But Russell Westbrook likes to shoot, not very efficient, but rebounds and assists and points, a triple-double. He joins the Lakers staff. He joins the Lakers ball club for Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, KCP. The impact on the Lakers, by the way, also got Carmelo Anthony, and the impact on the Wizards, Charlie. What do you think as far as the Lakers' point of view, and then once you hit the Wizards' point of view? Because this is a big one.
Hang on 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know you're number 102 at the Social Security office, but you have to sign up for Medicare. Yeah, the entire Lakers team has to sign up for Medicare. That's correct. Yeah. No, the league requires it. Okay, thank you. Jeez Louise. You can't find anybody under 35?
Really?
They're the oldest team in the league now. I don't know. I'm not thrilled by it. I mean, the trade for Westbrook was okay. I'm not thrilled by it from the standpoint that I think he needs the ball a lot, just from the way he plays, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Okay, I really don't. But I think his style of game says I need the ball a lot. Now, how does that fit with LeBron? How does that fit with AD? I don't think well, because when it comes down to crunch time, who do I want to have the ball? Well, I want LeBron to have the ball. I mean, I'm sorry, when it comes down to the last few seconds, do I want Westbrook to have the ball? Do I want AD to have the ball? Heck no, I want LeBron to have the ball. So I don't know how that all fits. And, Westbrook, we all know, can become a head case quickly. I mean, I'm not talking out of school here. I mean, this is okay. So I don't know. I wasn't thrilled by it. I'm not awful by it. And those guys that they traded to the Wizards, they were offering up for all kinds of things. I mean, first of all of those guys were rumored to be coming to Sacramento for Buddy Hield and a couple of other people, some expiring contracts first. And then the Westbrook thing came up, and shoot, I understand. Buddy Hield would have been a longer term investment for them, but the Lakers don't do long-term investments. The Lakers are win now, and they've got the money to win now. So if it had been me making the trade, I would have said, forget Buddy Hield and go with Westbrook too. I mean, that's logic when you've got that kind of resources. But I don't know. I mean, Carmelo and
yeah. I was a little surprised by that, but you know what? LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Carmelo Anthony, even Chris Bosh in that draft, they all made it a point that they all wanted to play with each other. And of course, they have 2 rings in Miami with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, and now they played together in Cleveland for that one run for a little while, and now Carmelo Anthony gets to play with one of his best friends, LeBron James, on the Lakers as well too. I'm okay with the Westbrook trade if he doesn't have the head case issues. They better win. This is what they're playing for right now. As far as the Lakers perspective, and of course I am a Lakers fan. We all know that already, and I'm not sure where to make from this team. And they reacquired Dwight Howard as well too. That's going to take a lot of pressure off Anthony Davis as well too.
Dwight Howard.
Yeah, well, but you know what, Dwight Howard can play.
How old is he?
Yeah, but Dwight Howard can play 10 to 15 minutes, and he can play defense, and he can block shots, and he can rebound, and that does take a lot of pressure off Anthony Davis from the offensive side. If they put the both of them on the floor together, I think that's pretty good defensive stat. By the way, the Lakers were 5th in defensive efficiency last year, so I don't know. Obviously, Russell Westbrook's not going to help that.
Gone. That team's
Yeah,
gone. Now you
yeah.
got the Medicare kids here.
Right. I
You know,
understand that. Well,
so
they're open to score. Their problem was offense last year. They needed to score, and this is an offensive league now. The way the league is gone, it's an offensive league. And if you have any defensive principles at all, Russell Westbrook can steal the ball. Davis is a great shot blocker, and LeBron James, when he wants to play defense, can play defense. Now, the impact on the Wizards, who I thought got really good value out of this trade, they got Montrezl Harrell, they got Kyle Kuzma, and KCP, and they're an up-and-coming team. I know they didn't have a very good year last year, but boy, they played well. Remember, we talked about it in the second half of the NBA season, the 72-game season. They moved themselves up from 12th place in the Eastern Conference into the 9 spot or the 8 spot, I believe, because they had the home game against Indiana. And they moved themselves 5 spots up in about a month period. And that is not easy to do.
no.
And a lot of that had to do with Russell Westbrook. But don't forget, everybody, and there hasn't been a lot of chatter about this, that I think that's going to convince him to stay, but not a lot of talk of Bradley Beal now in terms of moving. And you add Kuzma, Harrell, KCP to this team, and Bradley Beal, who's a legit scorer, and their bench guys are really good. Hachimura. This could be a team to be reckoned with. I don't know if they're not Brooklyn, they're not Philadelphia, maybe, but they're certainly capable of being in the upper 4 now in the Eastern Conference, and that's a good impact. And Kyle Kuzma can have the pressure taken off him a little bit now. Being in Washington, D.C., Montrezl Harrell's just a beast. And KCP, if you watch Lakers games like I do, especially late at night on the East Coast, if you got nothing else to do, watching the Lakers games, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had moments where he can just shoot the ball. And even in the playoffs, he can shoot the ball as well, too. So I think the Wizards made out pretty well in this trade for their purposes, Charlie.
Yeah, ESPN did, as every site does, they grade the offseason, and they gave the Wizards the best offseason grade of anybody. And I think it's interesting. Your point about Beal is that Beal's been very quiet. So he's not it doesn't seem to at least be openly asking for a trade or a move. And I think what we're going to see is that he's going to be willing to give all of this a try and see how it works in the early part of the season. Now, if it's not working coming up to trade deadline, he may be saying, okay, I want out. But at least for the beginning of the season, I think he's interested enough to say, let's see how this works, because they certainly got better. And I think that's what most players are looking for. Did we get better? Because if you've got a basis and a foundation to say we got better, okay, like you said, they may not be the Nets, but if we got better, then that means we can continue to get better. And that gives you hope for the future. And I think that's what most players are looking for.
Vasu, Vaddiparty, Charlie O here. The Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, August 6th on Facebook and YouTube. Last NBA point, we mentioned Damian Lillard. He's in Tokyo right now. Kawhi Leonard declined his option with the Clippers. He wanted to go to the Clippers to be back in LA. I don't know if this means that he wanted to go to the Lakers, but now the Lakers seem like they've got a full roster on there, and Kawhi Leonard's still coming off his injury. I don't know what's going to happen, but what do you think about Damian Lillard and Kawhi Leonard? They're the top two free agents, I believe, still going right now, as far as without a team, Charlie. Well, Damian Lillard's on Portland, Kawhi Leonard still with the Clippers, but they are free agents.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of money's been spent already. And it's going to be interesting to see where they wind up. Again, yesterday on Sports Center, they did a very interesting retro. Last year, or the last time Leonard was a free agent, it was all of this. It was like paparazzi was out everywhere in different cities taking pictures, and helicopters and secret jet rides and everything else, trying to follow him to figure out where he was going to go. It's like almost nobody cares. Okay, Kawhi's still a free agent. Who cares? I think everybody thinks it's almost a default that he winds up back with the Clippers. I think you're right. I think he hoped to cross over and change locker rooms in LA, and evidently they weren't interested, or he was too expensive. One of the two, which translates to me.
Well, he's going to be expensive to whoever goes and gets him.
That LeBron said, I don't want him. Okay, because rightly so. And, you can have all your own opinions that you want of this, but okay, LeBron's LeBron, and LeBron has big influence on the personnel in that team. Okay, and that's a whole nother conversation you can have at a later time, but he does. And if LeBron wanted Kawhi, he'd be there. And evidently he didn't want him. So now Kawhi's sitting out on Fantasy Island someplace. And I think the only place he's going to have left to go is to go back to the Clippers, which I think is going to be a big disappointment to him, because I think he wanted to be the guy that was sought after, and nobody's seeking him at this time.
He was sought after when he first came out from Toronto because they came off a championship, but I'm not sure the Clippers have championship aspirations right now. All right, more to come with the NBA. We got 5 minutes left here, so let's hit the NFL real quick. Training camps have opened for 2 weeks. Obviously, for this purpose and the purpose of our show, NFL is king when it comes to sports wagering and sports. I'm sure there were people that bet on the Hall of Fame game last night. The Steelers were -1. The total was 37.5 for the game. They did win 16-3. Neither quarterback played. In fact, Dak Prescott didn't even go to Canton. He's still rehabbing. Najee Harris from Alabama. Everybody wanted to look at him. He played well. Chase Claypool had a great catch. He's going to be a big target for Ben Roethlisberger this year. I think the Steelers have done well by Ben to get a running game, because everybody knew they were going to pass last year, especially out of that formation. New offensive coordinator, new terminology. Check out the interview with Sal Paolantonio. Don't like to give ESPN a plug too much, but it's a pretty good interview with Ben Roethlisberger yesterday. All right, New York Giants have had 4 guys retire in the last 3 days. Joe Looney, Zach Fulton, Todd Davis, all veteran guys in Joe Judge's camp. Apparently he runs a really tough camp, and with sprints and push-ups and all this. Kelvin Benjamin, who's trying to make a comeback as a tight end, the wide receiver from the Panthers, he's done after being released last week by the Giants. And then Jimmy Graham, frustrated with the NFLPA with more testing and the 17th game in the NFL. It seems like the Players Association not sticking up for the players. They do have the worst union. I will give him that in terms of negotiating with the NFL. And I don't blame him. More testing. If you're clean for 3 weeks, then you should not have to test for another 3 weeks. But apparently they're going to do more testing, and he's not happy with the 17th game. All right, finally, the Hall of Fame class, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Cowher from the class of 2020. Tom Brady's going to make a visit with Bruce Arians, Peyton Manning's old coach. He's going to sit in the section of Peyton Manning with all his former Colts players there. I wonder if he's going to bring all 7 of his rings there this weekend just to show off and remind them. But frankly, I don't think that's the case, because they're rivals, and it was a good rivalry. Peyton Manning is 3-2 against Brady in AFC Championship games, so it's not like Brady had it overcome. Of course, Manning has the 2 Super Bowls, but Brady has the 7 Super Bowls. Let me just run down the class real quick for 2020. Bill Cowher, Jimmy Johnson, Steve Sable, Paul Tagliabue, George Young, Harold Carmichael, Jim Covert, Bobby Dillon, Cliff Harris, Winston Hill, Ed Sprinkle, Max Speedy, Duke Slater, Donnie Shell, who I thought was already in, and Alex Karras, who I also thought was already in, will go in posthumously.
My man, Alex.
Yeah, I don't have the 2021 class. In fact, I'll look it up. But while you talk about it, Charlie, go ahead and give your take here for the last couple of seconds here before we move on to picks.
Well, folks, if you just tune in and watch the Hall of Fame intros. I mean, they're great, and it's fun to watch big uglies cry. I mean, it really is. Alex Karras should have been in a long, long time ago. I know none of you know who he is, but he was a great, great football player for the Detroit Lions back when the Lions were actually good. One of the reasons why I love Alex Karras is I look like Alex Karras.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
Hey, listen, when I lived in Michigan, people used to stop me and ask me to sign things for them because they thought I was Alex Karras. And I got so annoyed with it, after a while, I would just sign, because when I wouldn't sign, they would get mad. So I just finally started signing autographs for Alex Karras, because I would go to Pistons games and they would come up and get angry because I wouldn't sign things. So I finally just started signing for Alex Karras.
All right. In our last minute here, let me run down the list of 2021. Peyton Manning, Calvin Johnson, Charles Woodson, John Lynch, Alan Faneca, Drew Pearson of the Players, Tom Flores of the Raiders and Seahawks, who should have been in a long time ago, and Bill Nunn, a scout for the Steelers. All right, we move on now to our picks, what everybody's waiting for, our world-famous unsponsored picks. We'll post them as well, too, but I'm just going to run them down for Charlie real quick. Miami plus 140 versus Colorado tonight in Colorado. San Francisco, Milwaukee under 8. I'm going with the Cubs Sox under 9 in a few minutes, actually, 20 minutes. Philadelphia with Gibson, 109. Cincinnati, San Francisco, Toronto, and Detroit. That's going to do it for a weekend of sports, weekend of wagering. Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O for the Make the Money and Run podcast. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday at 3. Keep checking our social posts for picks and updates. Bye, everybody.